All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. For those I've not met, my name is Patrick J.U. I have the privilege of leading Operate for our technology, media, telco practice globally. Thrilled to be here, Jeff, with you. This is round two for us.
Second year in a row.
We said last year we would do a bit of a road show. Maybe this is the continuation of that, perhaps. But Jeff, so your role, Senior Vice President for Portfolio Strategy for Cisco. Would love maybe to start with the team understanding a little bit about your role, what that entails.
Yeah, that's and by the way, thank you again for having me for a second year.
Of course.
So my role is really to look across the Cisco portfolio and help align our strategies. And about a year and a half ago, we realigned the entire product organization around really four main outcomes: helping our customers with AI-ready data centers, future-proof workplaces, secure global connectivity, which is really about our service provider and telco work that really connects all of these things, and then foundationally digital resilience, so security and observability and the ability to react to threats in a faster way than ever before. And my role really is to work across all the different product teams to help align towards those particular outcomes and make sure that our strategies are working in sync.
Awesome. Thank you. I think it's maybe as a bit of a lead in, I think it's fair to say we will see certainly Agentic AI really stressing every single layer of the tech stack. I think some could argue we're already at an early inflection point as it relates to that in the context of, meaning those who get autonomous network operations right going forward, being able to capture greater value. So thus, I think the importance of our topic today, right, which is the importance of infrastructure as it relates to Agentic AI.
Yes. So I think we're firmly moving into this next era of AI. So for the first few years, when it really became a big deal, it was all about chatbots, which is really about, almost like advanced search, getting better information, humans interacting with bots. Now with Agentic AI, you basically see digital coworkers. So agents now are able to do complete workloads, complete tasks, and it is creating a completely different set of constraints on our customers. So we actually look at three things in particular. And by the way, physical AI is the next thing that's also coming right around the corner, where you have robotics, humanoids, specialized industry robotics in different organizations. And so we see three things that are really holding AI back right now, Agentic AI in particular. So infrastructure constraints. When in the early stage of chatbots, most of the infrastructure required was actually with a handful of companies that were training the large models. Today, as we move to Agentic AI, now inferencing becomes the issue. And so this comes down to our enterprise customers who are now having to run this, so oftentimes in their own cloud or in their own data centers, because they need to be close to where the data is. Yeah. And so huge infrastructure constraints, huge security trust gaps, needing to look at safety and security so that people can roll this out in a confident way. And then also we see a data gap, being able to actually collect all the data that you need to understand what's happening in this agentic world.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So as we jump in, Jeff, maybe to start out with, so when you think about how Agentic AI really kind of fundamentally changes the infrastructure demands, the security demands on business today, what comes to mind there for you?
Well, on the infrastructure side, if you think about chatbot traffic, think of like inferencing as being very spiky. People ask questions, does a little processing, comes back with an answer. And what you'll see in your infrastructure is a very spiky type behavior of traffic. With Agentic, it maxes out very high and stays very high because agents are working nonstop. They're working with other agents. They're spawning other agents. They're coding on their own. And so this does create a completely different set of requirements for infrastructure when it comes to, being high bandwidth, low latency, thinking about connecting across data centers that may be in very, quite a distance away from each other.
Right.
Thinking about enterprise networks as well and all the additional load instead of just normal application traffic accessing records on a database. It's like thousands or millions of people streaming video constantly. Sort of the equivalent traffic. And so like huge issues on infrastructure. And by the way, that not only changes how you have to think about the infrastructure itself, but all the systems that help you run that infrastructure. So actually using Agentic AI, or what we call Agentic Ops, to keep that infrastructure up and running. On the safety and security side, you have the issue where, essentially these agents, think of them, we said digital coworkers, but they basically operate without having to sleep. They operate tenaciously on whatever task you give them, taking, exactly what you say, not what you mean. And they work without consequences. So, what we are seeing is that agents today, if you look at what's happening with OpenClaw and other things, very exciting capabilities. But what you'll see them regularly do is go outside the bounds of what you've asked them to do because they think they need to do it to complete their task. And there's no consequence. With humans, we have consequences. We get reprimanded, we get fired, we, get a lower, salary increase. I mean, there's things that we think about. So we will not stray from some of the... There's no consequence to an agent deciding that, maybe I should just delete a whole inbox or something like that, and we'll start fresh and then apologize later or not.
That's a thought, right? Working without consequences, and not even to mention the demands created on the workforce and talent and training over time. I mean, it's a pretty daunting task.
Yes. So, I mean, what we're seeing on the security side is that the concept of like zero trust security, which is what we thought about securing human interaction, is going to have to be reimagined, because some of the constructs actually assumed that people were attacking you at human scale and not at machine scale, and that humans are operating at human scale and not at machine scale. And so when that changes, we have to rethink all of that.
Bit of a sobering thought in terms of being attacked at machine scale.
Yeah.
Curious, Jeff, from your perspective in terms of investments, right? So we think about, in the context of everything you just said, what are the investments you think are critical from an agentic AI perspective to really kind of enable where we're headed today, right? Because, one of the themes here for me this week has been, we're not just out to enable artificial intelligence, we're out here to enable all intelligence, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of context there around the investments that we need to really get this right going forward.
Yeah, so I think, obviously it comes back to the top, infrastructure and security are huge areas of investment. And we kind of already touched on that. You're just going to have to think about modernizing what you're running in your data center. You need to modernize what you're running in your campus and branch and other locations where you're interacting with humans and customers. All of that's going to have to get upgraded. I think organizations are going to have to invest in what we call agentic ops, which is understanding how to then apply AI to keep that up and running. We talked about security. And again, I think that we're going to have to fundamentally reimagine many of the constructs of security that we've had over the last couple of years. And I think that's an area that people are going to have to invest in. I mentioned data at the beginning. In order to actually control this system, like to be able to understand what agents are doing and stop them from doing bad behavior, you're going to have more insight into what they're doing. And that means more data, more telemetry. And so investing in a data fabric and understanding how to actually take machine data and use it as input into into AI itself, so that you can understand how these agents are behaving at machine scale and take action to correct it. But by the way, I would also say, that's on the technology side. There is a massive amount of human investment that is going to have to happen here. I think many job categories are fundamentally going to change, and that's not a secret. We know this. Today at Cisco, we have products that are now 100% being built by AI. So our developers are not writing code; they are writing prompts. Yeah. They're interacting with AI, and 100% of the code is being generated, for those products. And we're driving towards making that a much higher number across the entire portfolio. And in that world, the job of a developer fundamentally changes. We're already starting to see agentic AI add value in lots of other. Coding, by the way, was the first area of focus because that's where the model companies focused, in part selfishly, because they wanted to use AI to code AI and improve their rate of innovation. But we're already starting to see it go into other areas. And as that happens, I think, frankly, almost all of us are going to have to think about where do we add value, and how do we use AI? How do we stay on the loop on AI and get it to supercharge our roles, but understand that our roles are going to change?
Yeah, for sure. And, that's not even to talk about the change management kind of implications around that at the enterprise level, right? And really affecting and training and being cognizant of the behaviors we need to change with the folks who are in the enterprise today, right?
Yep.
So completely agree. All right, so let's transition a little bit into frameworks. So when you think about the answer you just gave in the context of, what are the advanced security frameworks you think are paramount for us going forward in terms of protecting the autonomous aspect of agentic AI?
Yeah. So if you look at agentic AI as coworkers, then what we're thinking, the way we're thinking about it is actually trying to create the equivalent security for agentic AI that you would create for a coworker, plus additional things that are, a human coworker,
Yep.
plus additional things that are needed. So, for instance, one of the ways we're looking at this is as you bring in agentic coworkers, you need to protect those agents from the world, because the world is now attacking them and trying to get them to do things in ways that they were not designed for. And at the same time, you need to protect the world from the agents, because the agents are going to go off and do things that could potentially cause damage. And so the way we're thinking of this is, first of all, this notion of AI defense. How do you protect the models themselves and protect them from prompt injection attacks and other types of attacks where people are trying to get agents to purposefully do bad things? And then, as I mentioned before, on the notion of protecting the world from agents, it's really about reimagining zero trust and thinking about what we've been doing over the last decades around least privilege access for humans, but then realizing that, again, when you have agents working at machine speed, willing to kind of step outside the bounds with no consequences, that zero trust is going to change. And so thinking about agent identity is a huge part of that focus. Thinking about behavior. So this is, again, understanding the behavioral analytics of saying, okay, this is what the agent is doing, and realizing that's not what we really wanted the agent to do, and seeing that maybe they're accessing a system that they shouldn't have been accessing,
Right.
and being able to take immediate action on that is really part of a completely different framework. We by the way, we started to see this if you take agents out of the equation, just humans, we were already starting to see identity attacks be the next big perimeter on attacking human workers. But again, the stakes are just so much higher with agentic AI. So identity and behavior are going to be paramount.
Maybe to add into that just a little bit, when you think about the protection scenario, so protecting humans from agents and the converse as well. What are some of the things, Jeff, Cisco kind of encounters when you're talking with your customers around that? What's important to them in that context?
Well, I mean, I think again, it on the security side, those two concepts really critical. The next big thing is the SOC. Like, how do you think about security operations in this new world? So a lot of discussions around that. But again, I think the other area is the change management side, where our customers are coming to us saying, okay, great, we're understanding some of these infrastructure, areas where you can help us, but what are other people doing? We're still in that stage where, actually, I was about to just say we're still in the stage where people are kicking the tires, but I think actually in the last couple of weeks that's dramatically changed. The pace of innovation in agentic AI and the models has just, like every single day there's something new, and you are really starting to see a world where this is entering the workforce faster than a lot of our customers anticipated. Shadow AI is now a thing, so we've all lived through shadow IT
And we'll continue to live through it, probably.
Continue to live through it.
Yeah.
But now shadow AI is a massive issue for our customers, and so we're having to help them get ahead.
When you think about change management, we typically think about that in the context of humans. Before too long, I think we'll be talking about it in the context of the agents.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Without question.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to pivot just a little bit to our relationship. We have a joint go-to-market relationship, which I know we're both incredibly proud of. Curious where you see opportunity for us jointly when we go to market together and serve customers together.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think what we're seeing across the board is how quickly what could be viewed as a very tactical project with our customers. Like, we might be working with them to upgrade a campus branch network because it's just end of life for their switches and routers.
Right.
That conversation turns very, very quickly into a strategic conversation about like how to think multi-years ahead. They're thinking, okay, we're buying infrastructure today that may last 5 or 10 years, and what are the things they need to be thinking about that's happening in 5 or 10 years? And so again, as these things become much more strategic conversations, and by the way, post-quantum is another area. It's not just agentic AI. We're hearing a lot of that. So as these things become strategic conversations, that's where relationships with you become really important, because you can come in and help guide the customer on the more strategic side, and we work together on solving those problems.
I think we've seen that very scenario play out already as it relates to our joint go-to-market alliance. We've had joint customers where they may have an interest in a hardware network kind of switch discussion, and those turn into kind of full-on network modernization plays for those particular customers that involve network operations, security. So I think that's just a very kind of natural evolution of maybe what you just said.
That's right. And I started the conversation talking about this notion of one Cisco and how all those four areas work together. What we're finding is that a very small conversation in any one of those boxes turns into a very strategic conversation across all of them now, because of all of these things that our customers are having to deal with. And so that's where, our relationship with you is so strategic.
All right, Jeff. So I think that that is our time. We appreciate you so much. For those who are watching online, if you have an opportunity you'd like to learn more, please visit Deloitte.com/operate. Jeff, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all.